Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for our Facebook Live support group. So glad to have you here with us. I'm Health Coach Rick, and I'm here with fellow health coach Nancy Adamczyk. Hello, Nancy. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good, Rick. Hi, everybody. Another week.
Yeah, it is. Please, as always, we should say this probably several times here, Nancy. If you are here and haven't had a chance to let us know that you're here, just quickly post a comment just so that we can acknowledge that you've joined us. Thank you again so much for doing that. Well, listen, and I think a number of the people listening, because they are our regulars, know of what I'm about to say, but in the last month, we have covered a few different topics that, based on your comments, those of you who've watched, sort of hit the sweet spot. They landed as being really important information and helpful for your efforts. So they were, in no particular order here, more is better. More actually is better. Being in the box, we sort of clarified the definitions about that, and then really just talked about why it's important in phase one to focus on being in the box. And then also we tackled phase two. And boy, when we threw out the thought starter, what's your most pressing question about phase two? We got a lot of good questions. So I think we did a pretty good job answering those. So just as a general point, I would say if you haven't watched any of those episodes, if you're more new to these events, then you might want to go back. It would be worth your time. Just to that point, Nancy, I'll read a couple of the comments of people who did share that those were valuable. Heather, one of our regulars, related to the More is Better episode. I love this one. It's funny. I definitely thought More is Better was a strategy that HMR used to slow down weight loss in order to sell more products over time. Now it all makes sense. I am so glad we cleared that one up, Nance. What do you think?
Yeah, that definitely was a good one to clear up.
Oh, God.
We're not out to sell HMR foods only.
Yes, no. I mean, these are tools that help people do better. Okay, the next one was from Sherry, related to the In the Box episode. I love the box idea because I'm a very erratic weight loser. I have no control over what my body does. I think people can relate to that. But if I know I'm in the box, I know I'm successful. And that was one of the main takeaways there, which was the box simplifies things and takes a lot of the guesswork out of losing a lot of weight and losing it quickly. And then the last one, Nance, was Andrea. She talked about phase two. We love this one. Tonight was one of the most meaningful sessions as I'm in phase two. I'm mostly eating phase one and I'm struggling to lose weight. I feel very supported and have gained new insight from tonight's discussion. Thank you. No, thank you, Andrea, for that comment. That was just awesome. Any comments that any of you, this is sort of sounds shameless right here, Nance, but that where you can tell us that these conversations that we have on Thursday nights are helpful, it goes a long way for us, honestly, just because we don't know that they're helpful unless you tell us. So thank you for that, Andrea and everyone who contributed. So here's what we're doing tonight. We're actually going to take some of the main points, some of the most important takeaways from those three episodes, More is Better, In the Box, and phase one, phase two, and the fact that a lot of what works to help you be more successful in phase two, you started practicing in phase one, and we're going to narrow it down to something that we call the BLAST plan, and we're going to define that, and we're going to define it over and over again, and we're going to really try to have this be maybe our most practical session. We're going to ask you, and we're going to say this a lot too here in the next 40 minutes, we're going to ask you to take on a BLAST plan, just as Nancy has this week, a little birdie told me, and I have as well this week, and we can talk about that as well. So let me not say any more. I understand there are some people joining us here, Nance. So
Absolutely.
Who do we have?
And say hello, please do. We've got Nancy on again. We've got Tiffany. Katie's on. Jennifer's on. Jeanette says thanks for these events. Thank you, Jeanette. That
Thank
feels
you,
good
Jeanette.
to hear.
Yeah, it does.
Terry. Yes. Terry, I found you. Daria, I think Daria's been here every week since she started. Susan, these are a lot of our regulars. Sherry's here. Wonderful. And another, we got two Sherrys. Two Sherrys. And then Casey.
3 Sherrys. Wow.
Um, so Casey, what did she say? Okay, I'm not sure. Stephanie and Vicky. So we've got some of our regulars. We've got some newer folks. So keep saying hi. Katie's on. Anthony's on. So lots of people coming on.
Yes, Jennifer cracks me
Karen.
up. Jennifer says, "Hi, Rick and Nancy's head."
I know.
Have we?
I noticed that.
We have devolved to being simply talking heads. It's just awful. Well, hopefully we can bring a little more to the game than just that, Nance. All right. So
Yeah, I hope so.
So again, what are we talking about tonight or today, depending on your time zone? We're talking about bringing the blast plan, and we're going to describe that, into Memorial Day weekend. Just very quickly, we're not going to formally define it yet, but this is a single day strategy, something that you do on one day that actually can have an impact on your whole weekend. And hearing me say that, Nancy, it almost feels like I'm overselling it, but I truly believe that, and we've seen so many examples of the blast plan having such a bigger impact than what people do on that day. Would you agree about that?
I would agree. So hopefully you're all on your edge of your seats, and you're excited about the challenge we're going to give you in a little while here.
Great. So let's, and I think that the challenge will make sense by the time we get to the point where we ask if you're going to take on a blast plan this weekend. If it doesn't make sense, we wouldn't ask you to do it. So, all right, Nance.
That's right.
As we like to do every week, lots of new ideas and strategies come up, and people are very generous and very brave. They throw out to the community, hey, based on tonight's conversation, I'm going to do X or Y or Z.
Right.
And you're committing to it publicly. And that's a huge form of accountability. And we want to support that. If you really want to get something done, and I think, this is not rocket science, if you say you're going to do it here within the community and you show up next week and know that we're going to ask you about it, you are much more likely to do what you said you were going to do. So that's using accountability to your advantage. So we like to do what we call the accountability spotlight, where Nance, you review what people took on. So forecast that, and if any of those people are here, we really encourage you to share if you did it or if you didn't do it. There are no judgments here.
Right.
It's always another week.
That's what I wanted.
Go ahead.
I wanted to emphasize that too. And we say this every week, but just again, let's say you said you were going to do something and you weren't able to pull it off. That's okay, because oftentimes that's another learning opportunity. So you don't have to feel badly about that at all, and good for you for stepping up the accountability and posting what you wanted to do. So here's what we had from last week. So we had 3 people, Julie, Leo, and Sherry, who had a goal of staying in the box all 7 days. So if you were able to pull that off, or a certain level of that, let us know. We had Jeanette. This was interesting. Jeanette's in phase 2, I believe, who was doing 3 days of decision-free, and she was going to focus on shakes and mousse.
Right.
So that'll be interesting to hear. And Jeanette's here, I know, so it'll be interesting to hear what she has to say.
Yes.
And then Nancy is also here. She was one of the first ones that said hi. She got the distinction, which I was thrilled, that she knew she was going to eat after dinner. She was going to plan what she was going to have for dinner rather than just feel like something's wrong with me that I want to eat after dinner. So Nancy, love to hear about that. And then Dana, we talked a lot about variety with fruits and vegetables, and she was going to increase her variety by roasting some different vegetables than she typically did, which I loved. And then Tracy, Rick, your orange creamsicle shake that you showed last week, she said, oh, I'd forgotten about that, so she wanted to make that shake. And then we had 2 people, Michelle and Doug, say that they were committed after the conversation last week to track every day. That's critical, to be able to record each and every day what you're doing. So if any of you want to comment on that, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, we really would.
Oh, so I have Sherry 100% in the box all week. The accountability helped me talk down the demons at least twice. And
Wow.
Sherry's always consistently out there with it, so, and she always says it helps her. So great job, Sherry.
Is that not a tremendous plug for accountability, Nancy? And like choosing,
it really is.
choosing to be accountable, and later you're going to hear how Nancy and I are choosing to be accountable around the blast plans we took on. that you call it the demons. It's just that little voice in your head, like, maybe doing 50% is going to be okay. And it comes in 1,000 different forms. But Sherry, congratulations! You used it to do 100%, and this work is hard. So whatever you can do that helps you to do it at 100%, boy, you can't ignore that, and that's what accountability does. Hey, Nancy, real quick, I noticed in the feed here that Casey mentioned that she has trouble finding the live feed, and then Dave also mentioned I struggle to find the live feed every week. I will just share. This may be more a Facebook issue than an HMR issue. I know that it makes a big difference for me to be able to see your comments here. I'm speaking to all of you out there. And sometimes it's like really hard to find it. And there's no real shortcuts. You have to just sort of scan for it. Nancy, I don't know if you have found a better way to lock into it.
What I want to say, one thing that I've learned, can I say something?
Please.
One thing I've learned is that when it's 7 o'clock or 7:01, refresh Facebook. And then it usually shows up, because I can't. You have to refresh in order to have it show up. And the suggestion of playing music, we can talk to our technical wizards and see if we can find something that'll make it easier. But the one thing I have definitely learned is refresh right at 7:01, and oftentimes then it shows up. Hey, I got more accountability here. I want to mention Jeanette did do the 3 days on decision free. She said the mission moose was accomplished, and she dropped 4 pounds.
Whoa! Oh, fantastic.
She's in.
Yep, keep going, Nance. You cut out a little. Oops.
At a 3-day. Now there's a blast. Oh, I'm sorry.
Could you repeat that? Repeat that, Nancy. Your audio cut out a little bit right there. The last one, not Jeanette. The one after that.
It's. All right. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So I just think it's pretty. It's incredible to take on something. It's a short push, but it was a huge benefit for you. And I'm guessing you were full doing all mooses all day.
Wow.
Nancy, before my dinner, I planned out a snack for the evening. Celery with PB2. It felt good to not feel guilty about snacking after dinner. That was one of our big points last week.
Sure was.
Nancy, that's fabulous. Doug did track all week. It kept me focused. Can you hear me?
Can, yes. Keep going.
Okay, and it kept me focused. And instead of doing 2 or 3 things that really kept me focused, let me see. And it helped with the physical activity. Dana roasted bell peppers, onions, and asparagus, and I ate a ton of it. It really made me full and satisfied.
Way to follow
goodness,
through.
Those are like, probably 40 calories a cup.
Yeah, if that.
So huge, very low.
Doug, on the record keeping, Nancy, did you see Doug on the record keeping? I did track all week. It kept me focused. Instead of doing 2 or 3 things, it really helped me focus on getting my P up this week. Fantastic. Record keeping. I can imagine that. The simple behavior of using the app or however you're tracking your progress to literally be a gateway behavior to getting you to do more exercise. Record keeping is such an important part of this. Great job, Doug. Really great.
Really wonderful. So we're getting more people. Okay, we're already getting people that are committing for next week.
Wow.
We'll get to that.
Okay, we'll get to that. Yes. All right, let's keep going here. So we're gonna, and feel free to interrupt me if anyone else reports as part of following through on what they said they were going to do, Nancy. I would love to hear that. So again, tonight we're talking about bringing what we call in the program the blast plan, quote unquote, into the Memorial Day weekend. Though of course this is something that once you understand what it is, see the value in it, and get some experience with it, you can apply it anytime. And it is hugely helpful in terms of helping you to stay on track. So when we say a blast plan, Nance, let's just quickly define that. Give me a definition for it.
All right, so a blast plan is a day when you push pretty far beyond what would be a typical high day for you in either HMR foods or fruits and vegetables or physical activity. So going well beyond your typical high day.
Right. Yep. I, what I did with the veggies and fruits for those
Yeah, I
who
was going to
watch.
say the what I gave you for those of you who've been watching these. I gave Rick a 12 veggie fruit day. That was an example of a blast because Rick, what was your typical high day at the time?
10. I mean, there was like
10.
a pure glass ceiling. 10. High day, okay,
Yeah.
10. And when you said 12, if anyone remembers, it was like, oh, why did I bring this up?
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
and
that should be the reaction right there. What you just said. Oh God, why did I bring that up?
right.
So you want it to be somewhere in the realm of the skill set, but having you sweat a little and think, oh boy,
Yeah.
what did I just get myself into? So that's a blast plan.
Yeah, yeah. And by going into that stretch zone, that's where your biggest learnings come from, your biggest insights, your biggest breakthroughs. It doesn't come from being in your comfort zone. The comfort zone is by definition just that, the comfort zone. You got to explore the stretch zone to keep developing a higher level of skill in this tough area. All right, so that's a good definition, Nance. Let's now, we've been talking here about,
Pretty straightforward.
yeah, but we're going to now talk about taking on the blast plan for one day over this long weekend. And let's just step back for 2 seconds here. I mean, we always acknowledge that there sometimes are just harder than others when it comes to staying on track. You know, sometimes you've got that flow and things are easy, and then there are other times when you might not even be hungry, Nancy, and you just want to eat, and the temptations are calling louder than normally. So that's just a basic tenet of the program. Sometimes are harder than others, and you want to be flexible with, gee, maybe I need to use more shakes during this time, or fruits and vegetables, or whatnot. But weekends, I mean, they sort of have their own hallowed ground as being difficult. I think we know that. And we're proposing that this coming up weekend could be harder just because it's longer. But there's such an interesting...
And it's a holiday.
And it's a holiday. That's exactly right. So here's a question for our audience. So put your thinking caps on here for a minute. There was a study done. Here it is, which it was... pretty extraordinary study. They got a large group of people to get on the scale, many of them for a whole year, many of them weighing in 330 times. I mean, there was a range, but that's a lot of weigh-in. So there's a lot of data here which supports the quality of this study. And they looked at which days of the week did people weigh the most. So this may be incredibly obvious, but I'm not going to move off of this, Nancy, until someone posts the correct answer to which day of the week, and it wasn't even close, by the way, did people weigh the most. Which day of the week?
Da, 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 da.
So let me just see, is anyone posting this? Hey, Sean's watching. Hey, Shawnee, good to see you here.
Vicky said Monday, followed by Katie saying Monday, followed by Nancy saying Monday. I think we got it, Rick. You're going to have to move off it.
Clearly, these folks were co-authors to this impressive study.
They got
Nancy. Yeah, and just to look at the graph, I mean, look at the spike on the red line there. It's just people, and what the authors reported, Nancy, they started gaining weight on Saturday, big surprise, and they gained weight steadily through Sunday night until the Monday morning weigh-in was the highest. So there you have it. So that's informative, and this speaks to, I mean, if you want to play the cards in your favor, if you're going to do this blast plan, which again is just such an effective way to manage calories and stay on track, doing it over the weekend, it may have its biggest returns in terms of your success on the scale. And over this long Memorial Day weekend, it might be particularly important to build it in. So we're sort of crafting the argument, so to speak. So let's talk about the Memorial Day weekend, Nance. We threw out a thought starter. Thank you so much for all of you who answered that. Tremendous responses. We asked, with the Memorial Day weekend coming up, whether you're in phase 1 or phase 2, what will be the biggest challenge for you? Nance, what were some of the comments that people shared with us?
I'm going to do that, but I just have to say this is really hilarious.
What?
So one, Vicky said, maybe, with the Monday thing, maybe that's another reason to hate Mondays.
Add it to the list.
Oh, I love this.
Yep.
Anyway, so, all right. some of the challenges that we got. And if anybody's got anything else, feel free to add it in. And then, Susan, I know you had a concern about the blast plan, and we will address that after, because I think it's a fair question, and we'll address it when we're talking about, benefits and possible concerns. So,
I see it. I see the question. We'll definitely address that.
yeah. So we had Lori worried about desserts. Gee, that's a surprise. That totally makes sense. And Aaron was even more specific with s'mores. Evil little suckers.
S'mores.
Those are so much around now, and all the grocery stores are selling the ingredients for that. And then Beth, snacking. Well, that's clearly always a challenge. Cindy, portion control. We can all relate to that. And then, even with everything going on, there are barbecues and celebrations happening. So people are talking about the various foods that relate to that. And alcohol was brought up a few times as a concern. And then Carla, this is for those that maybe don't have a lot going on, finding something to occupy my day that doesn't include food.
Yep. These are all great challenges related to this
very
weekend
real.
coming up. I would just say to you, Carla, I hope you're here. It's always good to be busy, no doubt. It's idle hands can often lead to more calories. But we have a proposition for you as opposed to, a strategy that doesn't include food. Our blast plan idea, and in some ways you might want to look at it as a solution to a problem, does include food and having some freedom with food, building more healthy food in a very intentional way into your day, and again into this challenging weekend that's coming up, can actually feel much more successful and accomplish what the ultimate goal of everyone is, which is to better manage your calories with an approach of abundance, of giving yourself permission, what we like to call focusing on the to-do behaviors versus the not-to-do behaviors, staying away from diving into the temptations too far or whatnot. So, Nance, I think this sort of brings to mind, if you just think about like some reality-based thinking about what happens with weight management, all of you will know of what I speak. It's just so easy for the weekend to get away from you. So whatever phase of the program you're in, you could be in phase one and your focus is aggressive weight loss, taking a break from old behaviors, being in the box. Getting away from you might mean being out of the box when you normally aren't, or if you're not always in the box, being much further out of the box than you typically are in phase one. Phase two, the weekend getting away from you might be, I don't think this is extreme, Nance, to say literally having all healthy behaviors fall out. I know what that's like on a lost weekend.
Everybody, it happens to people. It happens.
It happens. This is reality-based thinking, guys. I mean, there's no one switch that you flip it and everything is groovy after that. So Nance, the problem with the lost weekend, though, whatever phase of the program you're in, is that it creates an awful lot of work for Monday or for this long weekend, for Tuesday and the days after. Say a little bit more about that. We talked about this earlier. What it really means when you've sort of let things go for the whole weekend, what you face for that following week.
And definitely what you're doing is you've overeaten, right? So you're having more calories than what you need, and if it's really a lost weekend, you've probably eaten over quite a bit. And unfortunately, it's never as easy to undereat at that level as it is to overeat. And it's a lot of work. It's like you wake up the next day, not only is the scale up, you may not feel all that great emotionally, and then you're trying to pull off, unfortunately, it's not just one, but a series of calorie deficit days to kind of balance out what happens. It's not impossible, but it's hard, and it's discouraging. So another way to look at this, it's not all black and white, but if you can on weekends, which are challenging, have your overeating days be lower. We use the phrase, Rick, right? Cutting the tops off your high days.
Yeah, big Saturday, big Sunday, mindless eating, which everyone falls into at times, cutting the tops off those high calorie days. Go ahead. Yep.
So I'm just let's say instead of 1,000 calories being over, you're 300 over, something, just something like that. It makes it much easier to then under eat over the next course of the next week, and rather and balance it out. You may see a slight increase on the scale, but you won't see the dramatic increase on the scale, and it's much easier to turn it around and lose it again. So it's not a total prevention, but it's certainly a way to minimize the calorie damage, if you understand what I'm saying. So that's, again,
absolutely.
The reason.
Absolutely. Everyone knows what it's like after a weekend of less structured eating to have to pay the piper come Monday or maybe this week Tuesday. You may always have to pay the piper in some way, shape, or form, because weekends are weekends and we all like to eat. But we're talking about paying the piper a lot less. And while it might seem like a lot of work, Nancy, you mentioned work, how much work that next week, to bring a higher level of healthy behaviors into your Saturday, your Sunday, your Monday, that might seem like a lot of work. Coupled with, kind of married with, I don't want to do that. I'd like to just enjoy my weekend. But here's what I would suggest. The thinking is a little bit of work to bring a higher level of healthy behaviors into your weekend overall is going to save you a lot of work overall, because you just won't face Mount Everest. Maybe that's extreme, but I think everyone knows what I mean. Come Monday or come Tuesday. So the skills you develop on weekends to cut the tops off those high calorie days, to practice better calorie management on Saturdays, Sundays, they are your most important skills to develop. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Give us a like if you agree with that point, that just maybe a little bit on the weekends, and this week we're going to propose a lot with the blast plan. It actually can save you how much work and effort and frustration that otherwise people might face come Monday. Hey, Nance, real quick.
Okay, I think.
Nance.
Yeah, I just want to. We're going to do a success cycle pause.
Yep.
We have a celebration.
Casey.
Casey is. Maybe everybody's seen the post, but today, Casey, you hit a goal of losing 134 pounds.
And that was his goal.
I wish I had fireworks here.
Yes. Yep. Me too.
Just fabulous.
That's great, Casey. Tremendous job. So awesome. Keep at it. What you're doing is working, and if you haven't, Casey, looked back at some of those, or if you weren't here for those other events, I mentioned this right up front. Just as this is a huge deal. You're at a huge point right now. Rewatch the More is Better, but also the Phase 2. If you're moving now into Phase 2, those two events that we did. I think there will be some information there and some insights that will be really helpful for you. Okay, hey, my man Shane is here. Awesome. Very, very nice. Shane's already detailing his blast plan, Nance.
He's already planning on his blast plan, so he's ahead. So I'm already detecting that some people are on board with us, Rick. So
okay, so let me define it one more time.
Let's get into it. Here.
Yep, I'm going to just define it one more time if I could. So the blast plan is 1 day. Okay, it's 1 day. That's important because people will think it's for the whole weekend. We're talking about 1 day because 1 day is manageable. Hey, I can get your head around this push for 1 day where you push yourself well beyond what might be your typical high day on any of the behaviors of the program. HMR foods, fruits and vegetables, or physical activity. So that's it. You pick your day. What's the day? And you're exceeding what you might normally do if you weren't involved in this conversation right now, because you're taking on a blast plan. So, Nance, sometimes people will say, well, I'm taking on a blast plan, and then they share it, and then you might say, I'm not sure that's really in the spirit of the full blast. So, Nance, how might you know when you really have taken on a blast plan?
When the coach says, gives you a goal, and you get sweaty palms, your stomach starts rolling over, and you start thinking, oh my God, how am I ever going to do that? you really want to have something it's like an emotional, like, oh, I'm not sure I can pull this off. That's really what you're looking for.
Yes.
A blast plan is something that you have to think about, you have to think through. You cannot just get up in the morning and do it.
Right, right. So those are some pretty visceral physiological reactions to the blast plan. It might sound like this. It might just be you catching yourself saying something like, "Why did I take this plan on? This is a lot of work."
Yeah.
Then you know it's a blast plan. Or
and I have been known, Rick, to say, "Well, maybe I'll just tell her I did it, but I didn't realize." True confession.
Yes.
I don't ever do that, but it's fine. I think about it sometimes.
Yeah. Actually,
I'll just tell her I'm going to do it.
Nance, I'm thinking about when you gave me the blast plan, again, 3 weeks ago, to do the 12 servings of fruits and vegetables in a day. I actually think I did have sweaty palms and broke out in a full sweat on the Facebook Live. That might be another good sort of moment of interest for people to rewatch that episode. Yeah, so I was thinking you were going to say 10, which I know is my high day, and you said 12.
Yeah.
And I literally, I think I stopped in my track. I was like, ooh, wait a minute now. Things just got serious. But not to recap it all, but it was...
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, but boy, oh boy, again, it was so helpful. I won't detail them again, but Nancy, the benefits, we talked about this last week, it was just myriad benefits to taking on the blast plan. Okay, so that's the idea here, going above what you might normally do for the blast plan. And so now let's just sort of credential it a little bit more. If anyone is, I know people are already on board, but there might be some people who are on the fence. The blast plan, think about this, as opposed to how most people approach either weight loss or weight management, especially on a weekend, where there's this sort of air of mystery and this sort of we pin a lot on hoping it goes well, or it might just be like I'm gonna, whatever happens and expect the best. The blast plan's totally different than that. You are mastering the blueprint for that day, and as we've been saying, the impact goes through can go through the weekend. It's a clear set of positive strategies that you're familiar with, but you're just putting more of them together on one day. And when you do that, it virtually always leads to better calorie management, either better weight loss in phase 1 or better weight management in phase 2, compared to if you didn't have the blast plan. And Nancy, that's more of a statement of just the world we live in. We walk backwards through the world of temptation on weekends like this. We're talking about turning it around and walking forward and really authoring this day that we're going to call, the blast plan. So describe a little bit more as you're going through the day, Nancy. Like, what is the blast plan? What does it look like for people?
Right. So it's a to-do approach, first of all, and you need to write out a detailed plan before the day begins. You have to think this through because, again, this isn't automatic. You have to, and just going back to your blast plan, you needed to start at a certain time. You need to have a certain number by the end of lunch. You need a certain number before dinner. You needed to do a certain amount at dinner and afterwards. So you have to plan it out. You have to be in your record several times that day. You want to be able to say, okay, I did this, check that. What's my next thing that I'm going to do? Mm-hmm. All right, I did that. I'll check that. So it's very much on your mind all day, whether it's physical activity or fruits and vegetables or HMR foods, which is a valuable thing because, again, you're thinking about healthy, positive behaviors all day.
Right.
You really can't zone out, and it's when we zone out sometimes that other things come in more easily.
Yep, absolutely. So the blast plan can, again, be around food, and we focus on the to-do behaviors of either HMR foods or fruits and vegetables. You decide. Consider, though, that without a focused plan to eat more, again, we're in this world where it's like sort of a maelstrom of temptations of probably a lot of them your favorite foods. That's just how the weekends are, maybe especially this one. You really have two choices. You can either say, well, I'm just not going to eat the tempting food. So here's the tempting food. I'm not going to eat it. And there you are. And what do you have left to rely on with that? I'm not going to eat it. The strength of your word, your resolve. That is hard. We all know how willpower, we pin our hopes on it, and we know that the willpower doesn't work. So if that's all you're going to do, I'm just not going to succumb to temptation. There's not a lot to that plan from most people's histories that's going to support that to be successful. Instead, again, it's
plus it's very, very depriving.
Yes, and it's not like you pass that moment of temptation and, hey, I resisted the cookies. It's not like that's the only moment of temptation. I mean, the next moment might be 5 minutes later and it's like, oh, the cookies are still there. So this is a huge mistake people make where it's like, I'm just going to not eat the tempting food. Here's a smarter approach, and really one that's based in learning theory. If you focus on what to do, that's actually a much more effective way to reduce the likelihood of eating the tempting foods that you're trying to not eat in the first place. You're actually building a plan on what you will eat, presumably strategies, combinations, recipes that you like, that you enjoy, but you're putting a lot of them together on that one day. So instead of, I'm not going to eat the chips, it's, I'm going to do this, all of these behaviors, and that actually strengthens your resolve to not eat the chips. It's a very elegant approach. Isn't it interesting, Nancy, how few people adopt a true to-do approach to managing weight? And that's obviously what HMR rests its laurels on. So,
and as Rick, as that relates to physical activity, same thing. When you're thinking through and you're doing several bouts of physical activity during the day, we know that not only is it burning extra calories, but it tends to have you wanting to protect all that physical activity.
Yes.
By making other help.
Yes. So with the physical, if you
just the emotional impact.
Yes. If you decide to take on a physical activity blast plan, fabulous. The calories matter. Obviously, you're going to be burning more calories. The calories ultimately are the bottom line. But as Nancy just mentioned, there's this whole other thing that goes on, which is the positive psychology that happens, the emotional benefits of pushing yourself on physical activity. At bottom, it reinforces your commitment to what you're up to in your life around your weight and around your health. So there are so many different benefits to either the food blast plan, whether it's meal replacements, fruits and vegetables, or the exercise blast plan. Okay, so with that, we're at the moment of truth, Nancy.
Yeah.
We are challenging.
I think we have a lot of people on board. I guess who are already making blast plans.
I know. I saw Nancy and Jeanette. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love it. So should I give some parameters for this?
Yeah. Let's define a little bit more carefully so that people are truly stretching themselves to do an actual blast plan. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So we just tend to give you some parameters. So as you're deciding what would my goal be for a blast plan, because it's helpful to have a number in mind. So generally, what we recommend is take your typical high day on the weekend for either meal replacements or fruits and vegetables, if you're doing one of those two, and then add at least 2 to that. So for Rick, again, the example was his typical high day of vegetable fruits were 10, so I gave him a 12 plan. If your typical HMR food use, if you're in phase 1, let's say a typical weekend is 6, then we're talking about at least 8. If it's 3, at least 5. So at least 2 more than what you would typically have as a high weekend day. And then physical activity, what's your typical high day on the weekend? Now add in at least 200 more. Mm-hmm. You may want to go higher than that, but at least 200 more than your typical high day. So hopefully you have your data. If you're tracking, you know what your high day would be in whichever variable you're choosing to go for. Rick, do we want to just kind of review it with the app just to make sure everybody knows? There's a couple of ways you can do it on the app. Mm-hmm. One is simply to just kind of be in your daily tracker and kind of scroll through to last weekend, for example, and see how many HMR foods or fruits and vegetables or physical activity that you had on Saturday and Sunday. Another way that's helpful is to use the summary tab. Rick, do you want to show them?
I do. Yeah.
with your
So
phone?
so here's a one of my recent weeks. This was actually the week I did the blast plan, Nancy. So there's my summary tab,
Okay.
which those of you who use the app, you're familiar with that. So take me through it, Nance. How do I look at one behavior over 7 days?
Yeah. So, for example, if you take physical activity and press on the caret to the right, it's going to show you a picture, a graph
Right.
of your weekly, and you can see each day there. So, Rick, what do you notice about your physical activity? Can you find your weekend?
Yeah,
physical
I
activity
love this
from
view.
that?
Yeah, Nance, I love this view.
I can't see it as well.
That's okay. If for people who have not tried this, but the caret is the little arrow to the right of the number. When you look at this view, every time I
Yeah.
look at this view on a behavior, I'm always surprised by something. It always gives me information I didn't have. So look at this Monday. Monday was not a strong day. I had a good rest of the week. I exceeded 3,000 calories, but that was like interesting to me to see the Monday. So let's look at another one.
Monday's a
Here.
low day for you.
Yes, yeah. Let me show you. Let's now
Yeah.
look at fruits and veggies. So you just swipe to the right.
Yeah, just swipe it.
Oh, I went to
Yeah.
water. Excuse me. Here are my fruits and veggies for the week, and this was a great week for me. Of the blast plan, you can see where the blast plan was in there for me. It was on that Saturday, and then I'll go to the the meal replacements. So everyone who's looking at this, what do you notice here? Let me see if I can bring it closer. This was illuminating, Nancy. Didn't even occur to me until I used the app to see this view. Saturday and Sunday, I popped off 2 zeros on the meal replacements. And so what do you think happened in my group that week, Nancy, with my coach, Kate?
Yeah, I think you got a plan to do some meal replacements on the weekend, right?
I did. I took on the plan based on this feedback to do a double shake, which I did last Saturday. Thank you, Kate. Appreciate that. So anyway, that's a quick run through. You need to know what your high day is. Typical high day. If someone ran a marathon, that's not your typical high day. So what's your typical high? Go use your records to figure that out.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
Yep. And
Nance.
then so now with that baseline,
Go.
you ready?
Yes. Go.
All right. So now with that baseline, it's time for you to decide what you're going to do. So based on your typical high day, which variable are you going to focus on? Is it HMR foods, fruits and vegetables, or physical activity? And then what should your goal be, based on these parameters? And then what day do you want to take it on? And Susan, to address your question, you said sometimes when you increase your meal replacements, you end up feeling like you're gaining weight. So that may happen for you. So if that is the situation, you could try it again with volume and see if it makes a difference. But there's 2 other variables. So maybe what you should do is focus on fruits and vegetables, for example, and go for a high day on fruits and vegetables. Again, remember, Rick did 12? And, you had a calorie deficit day even with 12 vegetable and fruits. Now, I realize, Susan, you have a different maintenance level than Rick, but you could do that, or you could do physical activity. So you don't have to choose meal replacements. You can decide.
Yep.
Do you want to add anything to that question?
No, I think that, ultimately the idea of the blast plan, it's not to blast the numbers high just to blast the numbers high.
Right.
There's a reason for this.
Right.
And that is we live in an environment where if you have even a few mindful moments, it can turn into a weight gain day. We all know that. Very simply. That's the world we live in. So, and then making matters worse, Nance, so you've got this toxic environment, and then people are walking through the environment in general saying, I'm just not going to eat the tempting food. And then they end up eating the tempting food eventually, almost all the time.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do here is just turn this around and say, if you focus instead on really stretching yourself through the blast plan to integrate more of those very low calorie but very filling food strategies that you've identified work for you, the HMR foods, the fruits and vegetables, or combinations of the both, you're just much more likely to, when your head hits the pillow at night, not have exceeded your maintenance budget. Whereas without the focus on the healthy foods, you're left to the the influences of this incredibly difficult environment we're in. That's the idea. It's all about calories. So,
And one thing that also happens, because you're going well above your typical, it really does force you to do some new things. Like you have to add in some strategies beyond what you typically do. Maybe the timing's different, or you're using some different variety, or you're plugging in something where you wouldn't normally plug it in. And I don't think I've ever given a blast plan to someone who didn't discover something in that day that they weren't doing or hadn't been doing recently that they found helpful and started doing. So again, Susan, you're pretty new to phase 2, I believe, or fairly new. This could be an opportunity to find another strategy that supports you with your effort to manage your weight. So it was a great question. I'm glad you asked it, and hopefully that is helpful for everybody. So we've got people already posting blast plans here, Rick. So are we ready to?
I'm thinking that we already have. It looks like maybe 20 people who've taken on the blast plan. I think in some ways, and guess what, guys? You've posted it. We're going to follow up with you next week. So, Nance, we may end up spending more time on the accountability spotlight at the start of next week's session than normal. But I would ask those of you who have,
we're going to.
Yeah, those of you who haven't taken on the blast plan. Hopefully, we've really gone to great lengths here to explain the reasoning behind it. I mean, it's just steeped in reality-based thinking, the environment we live in. Is this something that you should take on this week? The idea of picking one day and really blasting out of your comfort zone on either physical activity or fruits and vegetables or HMR foods. You decide. From our experience, we can almost guarantee that if you engage in this endeavor, it will be worth your effort, and you will come back saying, I didn't regret doing the blast day. That's almost a guarantee, I would say.
And I do think we may end up spending more time on this next week. So, think about your experience with the blast day and kind of reflect on it. And was there a benefit to it? What did you learn? Is there anything that you found that you would do again? Anything. Was there something that was hard about it that you didn't like about it? And what is there to do about that? Is there a way you would do it differently the next time? That's always a learning opportunity. And again, continuing to use you as an example, Rick. The first time I gave you the 12, you came back with 11, but you were also, which was valuable. But you also said, I know what I need to do. I need to start earlier than I did. And then you redid it, and you got to 12. So, again, this is all learning. And even if you don't reach the goal that you set, which is so high, I bet any money you're going to have done more than you would have done if you hadn't set the blast plan. And it's going to be valuable from that point of view. So Thank you for everybody that's, I love this. So many people are taking this on. Continue to post. For those of you who are watching this after the live session, please post your blast plan as well. So commit along with folks that are here. Let's see how many blast plans we can get in the feed. That would be fun.
That would be fun. So, Nancy, you said a lot there. I'm just going to bottom line it. Next week, in our event, we're going to ask those of you who posted, here was the blast plan that I'm going to do. We're going to ask you, did you do it? And we're going to ask you to be accountable. Yes or no? And if the answer is no, that's fine. No judgments. Because the next question relates to whether you did it or not. What did you learn? What was the value in having taken it on? Even if you didn't meet the goal exactly, like me on the 11 versus the 12. And then the third piece is there anything that you would do again from that experience? So did you do it, yes or no? What did you learn? What was the value in it? And is there anything that you would do again? Those would be the three things that we will ask next week. And just imagine engaging in this process over a long period of time. This is how you build skills. And this is how you get better at managing calories. And I'm talking a lot better by stretching, by pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, and choosing to be accountable, like we've been saying here. So awesome, guys. It was so appreciative of how enthusiastic people were in response to the blast plan tonight. All right, I think that we're going to wrap it up. It's 50 minutes in.
Done it.
Good time to stop. We will ask, as always, we hope that this was valuable. If this was valuable time, would you mind letting us know? Because if you don't let us know, then we don't know if this is landing as time well spent. So please, if you could just post a comment on that. And then, Nancy, we always like to ask people what else we should cover in these sessions, right?
Right. Yeah. Is there anything else that what in particular are there topics that you would really love us to cover in the next, we're here. So we're here every week. So if you have anything that you have a request for, please let us know and we'll work on it.
That's right.
We'll listen.
That's
I
right.
promise.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we're going to thank you, as always, for your time. There's so many other things you could be doing. It's just a privilege that we're able to all have this conversation with us as a community. So thanks again for tuning in. And more importantly, we hope that we see you next week. So have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you then.
Yeah. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Celebrate the holiday in a safe way. And hopefully we'll be back with you next Thursday. Take care, everybody.
Okay, bye. Thanks, guys.